Hey guys, Tom here from SerumPresets.com, and in this video we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the noise oscillator within Serum, and we're going to be kind of explaining it in a way that's not too boring. It's going to be explained in a way that kind of applies to you as music producers or sound designers, and kind of what other parameters mean and how they'll be useful to you. So the first thing to mention really is how this noise oscillator within Serum is a lot different to other noise oscillators. So typically within other synthesizers, you'll have a noise oscillator that probably produces white noise and pink noise and possibly a couple of other options, but it's quite limited in that respect. Now the way that Serum differs to these noise oscillators is that this is essentially a high quality, high fidelity stereo playback device that not only plays white noise and pink noise, but can also play a wide variety of different sounds, like attacks, harmonic sounds, organic sounds like paper bags, wind chimes, air cans, all sorts of stuff like that. And it can also play whatever WAV files you input into it as well. So you can actually use the noise oscillator to layer other sounds that you have on your computer within Serum to kind of layer that with other sounds, which is really, really cool. There's a few things that you need to bear in mind, which I'll go over towards the end of this tutorial if you want to kind of use your own sounds, but really, it's a really cool noise oscillator. So you have the basic on-off function here, pretty basic stuff, might not seem very important, but one thing that you should always bear in mind is that if you're not using the noise oscillator, make sure that you switch it off, because it will still drain CPU. Same with other oscillators, you know, if you're not using them, even if the level's at 0 and it's not producing anything, it is still taxing your CPU of your computer. So if you're not using it, make sure it's off. Pretty basic navigation, these are all the factory presets. If you want to use your own sounds, you'll have to import them into the relevant folder on your hard drive, and then you'll be able to access them from this menu. But this is how you kind of navigate all the factory noise sources. There's really loads to choose from. It's absolutely fantastic, and you can navigate them through this, or you can use the arrows. What else can we mention? So we have this one-shot mode here, and this basically, if you have, say, white noise, because these are WAV files, and if we play this, you know, it's just a constant noise source, and what that is it's a WAV file, and it's essentially looping over and over again. However, there may be instances where we don't want the file to actually loop over and over. We might just want it to play once, and a really good example of this would be the attack sounds. So what these are really useful for, and I've covered this in a few tutorials for when I've been designing like bass sounds or leads and stuff like that. These are really useful files to give your sounds some more attack. So for instance, a bass sound might sound really fat, but you can polish it really well by adding a bit of attack, and you could use some of these attack presets, you could use some noise, but essentially in that case you're only going to want this sound to play once, you're not going to want it to loop over and over. So a way to achieve this is simply to click this button here, and then it'll enable the one-shot mode, so the noise WAV only plays once, so that's really super useful. The other button we have here is key tracking. So what this will do is it will kind of pitch the sound from the noise oscillator depending on the note that's inputted into Serum, whether you input that in your DAW or you play it on a keyboard or whatever. Whatever MIDI goes into Serum will be tracked, and the key tracking will then pitch the noise dependent on that. So if I play up the keyboard, oh, sorry, I need to put key tracking on. So you can hear that getting more and more pitched up, and that's a really good way, especially with some of the non-noise sounds, so like the glass lid sounds, or the kind of more tonal sounds like the snares, stuff like that. If you key track that, it will actually be in key with your the rest of your sound. So that's a really good way to keep the sound kind of consistent if you kind of want that effect. We also have the phase and random parameters. These are pretty much essentially exactly the same as the parameters in the oscillators. So the phase and random in the oscillators, which I've already gone over in another tutorial. But essentially, the phase acts as kind of in the noise oscillator. It kind of it acts as a start point, so a sample start. So if I have the phase at 50%. What this is going to do is it's going to look at the WAV file, so the kind of sound wave, and it's going to play the sample from the middle, like exactly from the middle. But if I have the phase at 0, it's going to play the noise source from the start, and if I have it towards the end, it's going to play it towards the end of the sample. So we have the phase, and then the random phase is actually going to cause, it basically controls this parameter, this phase parameter, to start at a random point rather than exactly the same point every time, if that makes sense. This is actually really quite useful. You might think that's quite useless and might not have much of an effect, but this is really great. Say you input chords, so you input like 3 or 4 or 5 notes into Serum at the same time. And those are all triggering the noise oscillator, saying something like a pad, and you're using noise to kind of fill out the pad a little bit. What this will do is, instead of every note having the exact same noise, because of this random knob, each note is going to have each note is going to trigger the noise at a different point, and each note is therefore going to have a different subsequent noise source underneath it. So that's really a great way to add a bit more variation to the sound, instead of every single note having the exact same noise underneath it. So that pretty much covers the phase and random knobs. We also have the pitch knob. This is a little bit different to key tracking in that you can control the pitch of the noise, kind of irrelevant to whichever note's playing. So when we have key tracking off and we play noise, we can just pitch that, and that's just basically a way to give us a bit more control over the kind of timbral or the tonal aspect of the noise. And then finally we have panning and level, which are kind of a bit self-explanatory, but we can pan this to the left or the right, and again, level, pretty self-explanatory. This is just going to be how loud the output of the noise oscillator is. Generally, you want to keep this quite on the low side. If you're just using it to kind of fill out a lead or a pad, you want to keep this on the low side. But the opposite of that would be if you are kind of making percussion loops, like I've done a tutorial on, and the noise is kind of the main part of the sound, then you're probably going to have some level automation, which is going quite high, and the same with kind of risers and stuff like that as well. So the other thing to mention then finally is, as I've already mentioned, you can use your own noise sources within the sound. One thing that you really have to bear in mind, however, is when you are using a noise source which is saved on your computer, it's then what Serum is doing is it's finding that WAV file on your computer and then importing it into Serum to use as a sound. If, however, I'm using my own custom noise source, I save a preset and then send it to my friend to use, or put it in a commercial preset pack for people to use, and they don't have that noise file on their computer, it's actually, when they open the preset, it's going to be missing. So that's something really important to mention, is that if you send this preset with your own noise source being used to someone else, they also have to have that noise source on their computer, which is quite important to mention. So the last thing I would say is, this is a stereo playback device, so you can import stereo sounds that will play them in stereo. However, for stereo sounds, it will use a lot more CPU. In the manual, it says that this is added because Steve Duda basically wanted this to be a really high quality noise oscillator with the capabilities of stereo. but don't, if you are inputting a mono noise source, don't make it stereo just for the sake of it, because it will eat up more CPU. So generally try stick to mono, but I mean stereo noise sources are fine, but if it doesn't have to be stereo, then just keep it mono, and then it will use less CPU. So that pretty much covers the noise oscillator. I'm pretty happy that we managed to fit this into around 10, 11, 12 minutes. And yeah, hopefully you found that helpful. There's going to be a lot more tutorials coming soon. We're going to be covering other stuff like the filter section, the envelope section, the LFOs, the global settings and stuff like that, and also polyphony and other things like that. In addition to those basic tutorials, I'll also be bringing out tutorials for specific sound design very soon, so if you want to stay up to date with those, feel free to subscribe. Lastly, if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my presets over at SerumPresets.com. There's not much on there at the time of making this video. There's a deep house pack, but I will be updating that very soon for other genres that you guys might be interested in. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Feel free to leave a like on the video. It really helps support the video and helps me out. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.